Hey guys, part 3 of the American Revolution series that we started talking about in class. Once again, this is the third part in the series, so it is not meant to be a completely instructional video more than it is just a bit of something to help you review. And we are now in the Deep South, the third leg of the Battle of the American Revolution, and we're probably going to start in a place called Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain occurred in October of 1780. And it was basically right on the border between South Carolina and North Carolina. The main difference here is going to be probably the weapons that they were using during this conflict. You have the bayonets that were fixed onto the British weapons, and then you had what was down here, the Kentucky long rifle. Basically, keeping this in mind, the British held the high ground up here on top of the mountain, but they were surrounded by the Patriots along here. And ultimately, the Patriots continue to push and push and push, trying to get to the top of this mountain. And the British are at the top, trying to repel and hold them back. It's a ferocious battle. Right away, the British feel that they've made a mistake by leaving these trees here for the Native Americans, for the Patriots to use as cover. And it's very hard because, as you can see, they stand behind the trees using them as cover, and then they can stand and duck out. The rocks and the trees are making it very difficult for the British to take good aim and to take them down. So this fighting goes on for quite a while, and then ultimately what happens is the British are given a command at the top of the hill to go ahead and affix bayonets to their weapons, and they prepare to run down the hill towards the Patriots who are below them. And as they start this charge down the hill, the Patriots are forced to run away with their Kentucky long rifles. But, you know, they're running away from a guy with a blade. And then back up at the top of the mountain, the British commander would blow a whistle to signal them to come back up to the top of the mountain. And then ultimately what would happen is these sharpshooters on the Patriot side would kneel down and shoot back at the British as they're trying to scurry back up the hill. About a third of Cornwallis's force is captured in this battle. Now, we go forward into Camden. Camden is a mess. There's not much to say here. There's not much good to say here. If you recall, the Continental Congress had heard all about the exploits of Horatio Gates and how he saved Saratoga, mainly because Gates wrote up the report himself that said he saved Saratoga. So you also should remember this guy. This is Washington here. And Washington wanted to have someone in charge of the war in the South. Washington preferred Nathaniel Greene. That's who he wanted. However, the Continental Congress really liked this guy. I'm going to hide over here for a second. They wanted the hero of Saratoga, Horatio Gates. Okay? So ultimately, for whatever reason, the Continental Congress gets their choice, and they let Horatio Gates lead this attack down in Camden. Well, it doesn't go well. Right away, his Virginia militia begins to fall back. In the chaos that ensues, Gates himself becomes very panic-stricken, I guess is a good word. And, you know, you look at this image here, you can understand why it had to have been difficult to stand there toe-to-toe like this and fight. But ultimately, Gates jumps onto a horse and he flees the battlefield, and in just a single day, he has ridden 60 miles away from the battle. And then at the next additional 2 days, he rides another 120 miles. Basically, in just 3 days' time, he has ridden 180 miles, abandoning his troops altogether. Camden is a savage loss. With about half of the, with about half of the American troops killed or captured, the Battle of Camden ended in a comprehensive victory for the British. So now we move on to at least some better news, the Battle of Cowpens. Now, the Battle of Cowpens, there's, again, not a whole lot to say here either, other than it was brilliant fighting. Nathaniel Greene has decided to split his forces with Daniel Morgan, who is pictured here. And Morgan essentially is going to capture the other third of Cornwallis's force. Basically, without having to make you guys all professors of military drill and conduct, these are our colonials, and these are your reserves on a higher elevated position. basically what happens, we talked about this, you have these individuals begin to fall back. And as they fall back, the British are ordered right away to charge. And they wind up running back into this second line that just cut them down like grass. It's a brilliant military strategy. And it's a great win for the Americans at Camden. It's like at Cowpens, I apologize. Okay, so last but not least, this is going to be the Battle of Yorktown. Now, we've talked an awful lot about the Battle of Yorktown, and I just thought that maybe we would try to recap it here for you quickly. I don't want to beat it over the head because we've talked about it so much, but you remember Cornwallis. He's the big dog. He's what's left of the military force in the South as Clinton had moved to New York. So you've got Nathaniel Greene. He's in charge of the operations in the South as well. Nathaniel Greene is trying to stay ahead of Cornwallis, frustrating him tremendously. So Cornwallis does something drastic. He decides to go ahead and burn his supplies, burn his wagons, so that he can move his army faster, so that he can catch Nathaniel Greene. Okay, sorry about that. Basically, if you follow this route here, you're going to see we're going through the Carolinas here, and you're going to be able to track Cornwallis's movements. You're going to see the Battle of Kings Mountain here on this map. You're going to see Cowpens. And basically, ultimately, if you follow along here, you're going to see Guilford Courthouse. Now, this is a big one, and I would just want you to follow along here as we go up through this. Sorry, I lost my cursor there for a second. Basically, they get to the river. The Patriots are able to cross over the river faster than the British are, and then Nathaniel Greene decides to engage Cornwallis here at Guilford Courthouse. Now, it's ultimately a loss, and we talked about that in class as well. We, the Patriots, do lose this battle. However, because of this battle, Cornwallis exhausts his men. They have very little supplies left, and he is forced to find another route. Now, for what it's worth, Nathaniel Greene decides to try to use the same sort of strategy that Daniel Morgan had used at the Battle of Cowpens. So he's got this front line and he's got the reserves back here. He's just outmanned. He's outgunned and probably outsmarted too. So after this battle here at Guilford Courthouse, you're going to see, I mean, if you follow Cornwallis, he begins heading out to this point. He decides that he's going to race north to try to get into Virginia, where he's got better land, some fertile farmland, lots of farms to pick from for all the goodies that you're going to need to feed a bunch of men. And he'll be able to get here near the water to get resupplied. Now, enter Lafayette. Lafayette is ordered to basically keep Cornwallis busy as he begins to draw out onto the peninsula. So what we have here is, as Cornwallis is drawing out into the peninsula of Yorktown, you see Lafayette is sort of harassing him, trying to keep him out on this point. And then you're going to see Washington, Rochambeau, all these guys come rushing down here. You've also got Greene in this area. And you'll take note that you're going to see de Grassy's French fleet is going to arrive August 30th. That's a big deal. Okay? Rochambeau was a French officer who was involved in this, and he had gotten word from a naval fleet coming from Haiti. He's a Frenchman coming from Haiti, that they would be available if Washington had any need of him. Well, this is a big deal. Okay, so this French fleet comes up from the south and is going to park here in Yorktown. Basically, you're going to have the British fleet come down, and they are going to have quite a naval battle between the English and the French. Afterwards, I'm telling you, the British are defeated, and they are going to limp back home, where they will resupply and try to come back again. But by the time they get back, it's too late. Cornwallis will have surrendered. So we have this huge naval battle that blows out. Ultimately, the French wind up driving off the British. And ultimately, now we can lock Cornwallis down under siege. Tremendous battle lays out for about a month, where basically Cornwallis has no supplies. His men are hurt. They're tired. And ultimately, at the Battle of Yorktown, George Washington, commanding a force of 17,000 French and Continental troops, begins the siege known as the Battle of Yorktown against British General Lord Cornwallis and a contingent of 9,000 British troops at Yorktown and Virginia. Ultimately, we know history. We win. Washington wins. And it's interesting because in the surrender, Cornwallis will not come out to surrender himself. He sends a second in command. And basically, a second in command comes out and tries to surrender to the French commander there, Rochambeau. And Rochambeau just kind of folds his arm and goes, "That's not for me. You want to give that to Washington. He's the man in charge. I'm his subordinate." So you have this sort of British surrender who would much rather surrender to the French than we ragtag group of dumb country bumpkin hick farmers. But ultimately, that is the Battle of Yorktown. That's the end of the story. Hopefully you've got them all. You've heard them all. And hopefully maybe I've clarified any questions that you had between all of those battles. That's it for now, guys. I hope, as I said, we cleared up some gray area. But otherwise, we'll catch you next time.